Situation is boiling over across Johannesburg as residents affected by widespread water outages prepare to take their anger to the streets. The Water Crisis Committee is set to protest outside of the headquarters of Johannesburg Water, blaming a multi-system failure for ongoing shortages that have forced schools and businesses to close. The group is calling on national government to urgently intervene, accusing both Rand Water and Johannesburg Water of failing to provide clear explanations or credible timelines for the restoration of supply. Newzroom Afrika's Veronica Mahwadi joins us once again. Veronica, so many of the residents are expressing their frustration, especially in them saying that this is a city that doesn't care, given the prolonged times in which the outages take place with regards to the restoration of water not taking place as quickly as expected.
That's correct, Katleho. In fact, it's that key word, a city that doesn't care. That's the sentiment that's been said by many of the residents, particularly over this week coming out from Midrand, where they have detailed what it's like living without water for almost 2 weeks now. And many of the residents are, of course, upset at the fact that they are essentially paying for a service that they do not get. And the reality is that there needs to be constant communication coming from the various water entities, be it Rand Water or Johannesburg Water, on not only credible timelines to fix the situation, but that it cannot be that every single time we approach the peak of the summer season, particularly now as temperatures are scorching, that it always has to be a situation where water has to be spread out and systems are failing due to this high demand. I'm just going to step aside as well now, Katleho, just to show you as some of those residents are gathering from various communities. You would have remembered that it was a technical fault at one of Johannesburg's water systems that ultimately saw water systems failing and once again casting a spotlight on the city's fragile water system. And while Midrand was, of course, the epicenter of this crisis, various parts of Gauteng felt the pinch of this with the dry taps for weeks on end. All of this happening against the backdrop of areas in the city of Johannesburg that have already been dealing with prolonged issues of water shortages and severe technical issues. I'm going to bring in now Dr. Farrell Adams, the Executive Director of WaterCan, a voice, if you will, of many Johannesburg residents that tells us the story of Joburg Water. Farrell, we are seeing you once again on the streets. A desperate call for these residents under the banner of the Water Crisis Committee. One of the demands is that the issues that we're facing in regards to water should now become a national emergency. Funds directed to these issues. How would this help in terms of what we are facing, and perhaps if residents watching in other parts of the country also facing water issues, could they say, well, what makes Johannesburg more important than the rest of us?
Good morning. Yes, that's a very good question, and I think that, thanks to the Water Crisis Committee, we are here today. WaterCan supports their protest, but also WaterCan has definitely called for a national disaster because government has, in the last week declared a national disaster on Knysna and parts of Western Cape because they are nearing day zero. But this couple of weeks, and you started with Midrand, but let me tell you, there are people in Melville and Maldene who have not had water for about 3 weeks. And so they've been living day zero. And we're saying that unless we have government declare a national disaster on infrastructure, both in water and sanitation, then we are not going to actually see concerted effort to make a change in the city. But listen, it's not just about Joburg. You are very right. WaterCan works nationally. From Witzenberg in Western Cape, Eastern Cape, Free State, Limpopo, all these municipalities are struggling to provide clean, safe drinking water to people. We've got wastewater treatment works that are spewing sewage into our rivers and streams on a daily basis. So we have a national crisis. It's not just about Joburg, but Joburg is the picture of what is going to be happening everywhere.
And let's talk about municipalities a little bit. Do metros have enough muscle and resources to be responsible for distributing water? Are they doing their part essentially in being able to correct the issues and the challenges we see in regards to water supply?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that at all levels they have a handle on what is going on, because if you look at the metros, there are some metros that are struggling. And the metros should be the examples for the municipalities, the smaller ones. So I think, we need to re-look at the structures. Maybe we don't need metros, maybe we need to have one kind of tier municipality, so that they all have to deal with what they need to. And I really don't think that there's a lack of leadership, there's a lack of control over budgets, whichever metro you look at. So I think that this is something that needs to be done.
And then just a final one, we're of course heading towards the State of the Nation address. Water, infrastructure, sanitation will definitely be something that many of the residents, not just here that are gathered, but those even watching at home would want to know, where is the President's priorities when it comes to this challenge? What are you hoping to hear from the President in regards to tackling, as you've mentioned, this massive crisis?
So I think that if we look at last year's SONA, where they mentioned Hammanskraal, they mentioned the Guyani project, they mentioned the Lesotho Highlands Water project, I think that those are great, and they're not working. Guyani is not yet working. Hammanskraal is still in trouble. So there's no real progress. So we're saying to the President, that in itself should say you need to issue a national disaster of water in the country. We have a crisis, it's national, it's at all levels, and that must be your focus. Not all these nice, promising projects that look nice on paper, but actually get us nowhere.
And just before I let you go, Dr. Adams, paint a picture for us, if you will, of the current system of Johannesburg Water in terms of our reservoirs, and where are we seeing essentially the cracks within the infrastructure?
So it's really, really worrying. I think that we have 12,000 kilometers of water pipes, 11,000 kilometers of sewage pipes. They're both struggling. They're supposed to be replaced. They only managed to do about 60 to 80 kilometers a year. We've got half of our reservoirs in the city of Joburg that are leaking. So we have 85, about 45 are leaking, and 20 are only earmarked for repairs. But even with that, it's been a slow process. Why? Because Joburg Water has not had ownership over their budget, so they can't pay contractors, and contractors then stop work, which then extends the kind of emergency we're sitting in.
Well, thank you very much for that picture. Struggling numbers there. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Farrell Adams, the Executive Director of WaterCan. If you heard there, Katleho, just painting a picture, the numbers tell us all. Several of reservoirs leaking, 20 of them earmarked for refurbishment, but the reality is the red tape that continues to bar Johannesburg Water. In fact, we spoke earlier to our guest, Mr. Ravin Singh, a community member, a member of the Water Crisis Committee, who also spoke about the reality is that Joburg Water says the plans are there, but the lack of implementation, the lack of budget, and of course those credible timelines. And so as we wait as well for this group essentially to pick up in terms of the numbers that are here, you can see some of the residents holding those bottles, empty bottles, some of them banging on them, just to show the reality of what it has been like in some of those communities. Again, Midrand, really the epicenter of the crisis, but we're hearing there areas that have for a long time been dealing with some of these water issues. We'd know, of course, of areas such as Brixton and Auckland Park, where low water there is a permanent fixture, particularly in that community. But there's areas like Selby, Kensington, Bruma, Bezuidenhout Valley and Claremont that have faced these extended water outages going back for months. You can't as well forget some of those high-lying areas of Melville and Maldene. We understand even a recent report has told us that they have not had water since the 12th of January. And that paints really a harrowing picture for some of the Joburg residents, some of them even saying that dignity is dead in the water. But for now, it's back to you, Katleho.